Da si treba? Samo je Anastazija ovde.
Dobro, imamo dvoje kolega online.
Ček, ima ih dvoje online, sam nije mi se... A ne, znači... Da, ali neće da mi se aktivira...
Evo i trećeg.
Dobro.
Good evening, we're just setting up.
Hi, Seifel. Znači, sljedeću... Neće ni na ovo da mi se...
Mada?
A hoće. Sad ću da smanjim ovo gore. So you hear me all? Recording. Čekaj, recording sad ne vidim.
Zato što trenutno nemamo pretplatu, ne možemo da snimimo.
Ali rekao mi je Dane da imam recording.
Pa onda ne može automatski, sad ću da vidim.
Pa ćeš ti da uključiš?
Čekajte, mislim nisam sigurna da mogu, vi ste host.
English. So he told that I can turn it on, recording.
It should be somewhere in the bottom of the screen. We'll just fix that in Serbia.
Before I try to start recording, I have to explain to your students who've been online. There is, how to say,
Do you want me to explain it or?
No. Okay. There is a work in progress, renovation of the license for WebEx platform, and due to that, how to say, some kind of transitory period until Monday, hopefully, most probably after 40 minutes, WebEx will stop working. It means that you will wait for 5 minutes approximately, and then we will start. I will open WebEx again, and then you have to log in again. And so each 40 minutes it can happen. And I think we will not need. Yes, if there are 2 breaks, after the second short break, we will finish the lecture, let's say around approximately around 7 o'clock. So now I will.
The students won't need to do anything then. So just when it says it will end in 5 minutes, okay. And when it ends,
Dana told me that they have to log in again.
I think they will stay in the lobby. I think you will stay in the lobby just as you...
when I start the meeting...
Yes. If you don't, then just click on the link again. But essentially, since we're currently not subscribed to the premium plan, because the package that we previously had doesn't exist anymore, and we need to get a new one or something.
We will start now, because 40 minutes are passing fast. So I have to be efficient. So today we will, as you know, speak about the most relevant concepts and the terminology. We will start with gender and sex. First, gender, and please interrupt me if you have any question, or if you want to add something to the content, to the meaning of particular concepts, or if you want to put into question the offered interpretation, because as you know, in social sciences and also in feminist political theories, always there is a bit of a matter of interpretation. So, and there are many open issues concerning sex and gender and their mutual relations currently, as you know, but just to say that as an introductory note, the most common differentiation coming from the second wave feminisms from 1960s, 70s, is that, and Simone de Beauvoir initiated this differentiation, that sex is the biological concept primarily, and more important, that gender is the social construct. And now I will go into a bit more differentiated elaboration. So gender denotes a few things. Aside of the feminist theories context. Gender denotes conceptual category related to humankind, referring to things or persons that have essential properties in common and that differ in inessential properties. Genus, Latin word. Gender denotes grammatical category related to female-male distinction, distinguishing between masculine and feminine. Then it contains structural ambiguity. It can indicate the individuals belonging to the human species, including females and males, and to indicate male-female distinction. So there is a bit of mutual crossing of these different meanings, grammatically speaking, sociologically speaking, terminologically speaking. In feminist thought, gender is often used to indicate women considered as historically, socially, and culturally disadvantaged with respect to the male. Therefore, gender means human gender, male, female gender, female gender. Again, there are a few meanings, but the first one, which I mentioned, related to female gender and interrelation between female and male gender are most relevant. The crew, in order to understand, so sex and gender, difference proposed within the second wave feminism. The crew, in order to understand gender, is to place it in relation to sex. Quotation of Laura Palzani, or Palzani, I apologize, at the moment I can't remember how Italians pronounce double Z. So sex denotes the biological condition of men and women, of the male or female being, how one is born. Gender denotes the interior psychological perception of one's own identity, how one feels. So gender, that's one aspect. But also the exterior social, historical, and cultural condition, how one appears to others in the behavior, habits, and roles that are given and assumed by masculinity and femininity. Sex denotes how we are, the natural condition. Gender denotes how we become, the acquired condition. That's her starting point of elaborating the concepts of sex and gender, and you will see, because I have already uploaded her book at Moodle at the page for feminist political and legal theorists, so you can find it. So I follow her elaboration due to the fact that she has really very convincingly elaborated the genesis of these two concepts, their understanding within feminist theories and their mutual relations. So there are really changes in a sense of putting into question this differentiation biology social context construct, and then also putting into question binary heteronormative differentiation of within gender, so pluralization of the notion of gender, also pluralization, particular specific pluralization of the concept of sex, and consequently changes genesis in their in an understanding of their mutual relation. So feminist understanding of sex as biologically determined and gender as socially constructed term within the patriarchal pattern is related to the patriarchal pattern. Further development of the feminist thought brought interpretations that put, as I said previously, put into question reducing sex onto just biological category, introducing social element, social or psychological or sexual orientation, so to say, or unambiguously onto biological category. Yes to biological, but also with opening the space for some other factors of impact. So towards more complex understanding of sex, following the widening of scientific knowledge, this is which I, for example, by heart cannot say or reproduce, because there are also some very specific scientific terms. So following the widening of scientific knowledge, the determination of the sex refers not only to what appears at the moment of birth, but also to the analysis of the genetic, gonadic, hormonal, morphological, and anatomic dimension with references to primary and secondary sexual characteristics. Then she gives examples of intersex persons, children born with genital ambiguities or sexual indeterminacy. Discrepancy sometimes exists between acquired identity of some adults and their genetic sexual belonging. So intersex, transsex, some trends, so to say. Different interpretation of mutual relation of sex and gender, now to make some kind of the summing up. So one understanding is biological can be understood as a biological determinism, reducing gender to sex. Both are determined pre-given. Then social constructionism or constructivism that separates gender from sex. That is one which I mentioned as the most common one from the period of 1960s, 70s. So separate gender from sex, gender is social construct. And deconstruction is related more to 1990s emerging of third, somebody also speaks about also fourth waves of feminism. So this deconstructionism period or context of analysis, of interpretation, of understanding these categories is that we have on agenda thematization, the priority of gender over sex, or reducing or considering only gender as social constructs, because sex is also social construct. So debates between those who consider that there must be correspondence between how we are and how we become, those who are on the side of nature, and those who consider that there may be no correspondence between sex and gender, that we can become different from how we are born. So those who are on the side of culture, that is the second version, and the third, those who consider an interplay in a more flexible manner. So this is this third, deconstructionism. Older feminist interpretations point to biological determinism as well as to social constructionism. The advanced position within social constructionism puts aside, that's also a bit of genesis, puts aside sex within the issue of reproduction, because they start taking into, puts aside sex within the issue of reproduction as the crucial determinant factor, because of technological changes, and introduces the factor of reproduction technology as a tool for having children without partner, pregnancy, and childbirth. And this approach explains how metaphorically to say, freeing the framework of giving the birth from a patriarchal pattern, from female subordination due to the dichotomy between private and public sphere, etc., has been happening not because of overcoming patriarchal patterns, but because of these technological innovations. And how Palzani speaks, this second sexual revolution transforms sex into politics, new sexual politics that tends towards and enables replacing the reproduction as the relation of power and domination into freeing reproductive function of women from men. And also to mention the first sexual revolution from 1960s, you know what it meant, some kind of attempt towards the liberation of sexual relations from patriarchal inhibitions. So just shortly. So, and I said that this equalizing comes not from overcoming patriarchy, but from the side of technology. Postmodern feminism, the third and fourth waves, and issue of sex and gender. So that's that last phase of this genesis. Understanding of sex is changed in this postmodern context, conceived not only as biological category and not as unison biological category, and besides as it's and considered also as the social construct. It is in postmodern context that gender, already previously set free from sex, separates from sex more and more and multiplies itself in the differences, strictly and intentionally declined in the plural. However, gender starts meaning also sexual orientation. So here comes on agenda plurality of sexual orientation, and how this author says, gender denotes not only individual psychological, social, and cultural identity acquired regardless of sex, but also sexual orientation, or the choice and preference with respect to the relationship with the other persons of the same sex, opposite sex, but also of both sexes. Here, as she says, and I bolded, here arises the debate on heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality, but also on all other sexual preferences in principle. And gender becomes a category next to that of race, class, and ethnic group. So for us, this putting the category of gender at equal footing with these other categories or concepts is maybe more important that within this context due to the development of the intersectionality feminist gender-based approach to multiple gender-based discrimination, about which I spoke a lot during the previous and lecture on methodology course, and the lecture before at feminist political and legal theories course. And both recordings are put together at the WebEx page of feminist political and legal theories. So gender becomes a category next to as I said, next to that of race, class, and ethnic group, meaning that, yes, patriarchal roots of gender-based discrimination have to be taken into consideration as the primary ones, but yes, also, or in addition, or unavoidably, there have to be taken into consideration also other sources of discrimination based on gender, because always there are other sources like race, class, ethnocultural identity, age, ability, disability, education, etc., etc. And in this postmodern feminist considering of sex and gender, besides everything said, just to repeat that there happens also overcoming of the patriarchal heteronormative binary understanding of gender. And as we could witness also of sex. Some questions, comments, whatever, because now we will go further on about these differences and the genesis processes of the building process in understanding or elaborating these concepts, sex and gender. We will speak also at the forthcoming lecture within feminist political and legal theories. But if somebody wants to say something, you can add or put into question or whatever.
Well, while the students are thinking, if I might just briefly, if it's okay.
Students, of course that you can, of course. But I did not understand what you said for students because I can't see.
While the students are thinking, since I see nobody of them is raising their hands.
Okay.
Well, just personally, I don't think that the binary is overcome in that respect because it is still very much biologically relevant.
Oh, yes, that's very important to mention. I have to sum up with that, okay?
So while it is a matter of law whether a certain legal system will allow an individual who has the body of a woman but feels male to register as male and to change their name to a male one and so on and so forth.
But it is not only the body of law, that's also, how to say, a matter of culture, political, theoretical.
Yes, but just speaking from a legal point of view, whether a woman who is biologically a woman who has not undergone a sex reassignment surgery can be legally become a man, which we might again have arguments in favor or against. But even in systems where that is possible, where no physical changes have been made, that person may legally be a man, but that person is physically a woman. That person can still get pregnant. That person still can suffer from some health conditions that are specific to women and vice versa. We have also
just if I may add, because also Palzani speaks about that, and I plan to speak more about that within the lecture Feminist Political and Legal Theories. Okay, this pluralization of both terms, but at the end of the day, too much of pluralization goes beyond the theoretical possibility to understand, to capture the phenomena and to use the categories in a sense that also it's important to keep this biological starting position binary, to keep it in mind, and culturally heteronormative patriarchal subordination relations in order to be capable always again to struggle further on to struggle against gender inequality. Otherwise, struggle against gender inequality loses, how to say, the guidelines, the theoretical and practical guide somehow. So that's very important to be said. So thank you for my, but anyway, we have to keep in mind these trends of widening, pluralizing, sometimes overextending that in that pluralization, but we have to face the phenomenon and to keep this, what Nina and then what I also said. So does anybody else want to say something? So formal legal equality and equal access to justice for women and men. Nina will add that there for sure, but I do not want to pay a lot of attention to this because we have to go further there are too many things to be said. So right of individuals and groups to obtain a quick, effective and fair response to protect their rights, prevent or solve disputes, and control the abuse of power through transparent and efficient processes in which mechanisms are available, affordable and accountable and conducted on the basis of equality. So as said, synonym is formal gender equality. And what I forgot to say at the beginning, many or most of these terms or compounds of this glossary are taken from a few sources, among which you will see later, for example, from some international organizations and how they use, for example, for gender-based violence or sexual violence, I will use some definitions of UNHCR, of Red Cross, etc., etc. But for those more common terms, we use most of the glossary offered by the Institute of Gender Equality. And it is mentioned somewhere. But as I said, interpretation of terms always can be reconsidered. Nothing is, how to say, fixed in the stone. So related terms are, as said, equal access to justice for women and men. States have obligations under international law to ensure to provide access to justice. Women's access to justice is a legal and constitutional framework that guarantees women's rights, but without education, awareness of rights, and decision-making power, women are often unable to claim their rights, obtain legal and obtain legally protection of their rights, or legal aid, or to go to the court. And in a procedural sense, access to justice means providing those seeking to secure their violated rights with the following: appropriate and understandable information, to be informed about the scope of these rights and how to protect them, how to struggle for them, how to access them. A readily accessible infrastructure in both the formal and practical sense for acquiring this information and then acting upon it. The quality of the functioning of this infrastructure in practice, and the confidence in the utility and integrity of the infrastructure. To avoid secondary victimization, this is very important in procedural terms, secondary victimization and stigmatization of women during legal proceedings, meaning a gender-sensitive approach among judges within the whole judicial procedure has to be affirmed and applied. So if somebody wants to add something, if Nina wants to add something, please do that. So this formal legal equality is necessary, and as we said, without preconditions for acquiring, for realizing what is written in the law as the formal gender equality, that equality cannot be provided or realized. And there is a very relevant conceptual and legal, practical, procedural step forward done by not only by particular legal authors, but also by particular international organizations and courts of some countries, which affirm and take into consideration during their judicial processes the concept of substantive equality and substantive gender equality. And during the last lecture, we spoke about that and mentioned Sandra Fredman, who did the most and the best, or approached in a deepest or more complex way to this issue of substantive gender equality. And as a matter of fact, her theoretical contributions have been taken seriously into consideration in some particular courts, international organizations. For example, the last what I know about is the UN working group for women and girls, which starts in reconsidering issues of multiple discrimination of women and girls, the concept of substantive gender equality, and Sandra Fredman's explanation. And as you know from the previous lecture, now I will present shortly her understanding. She speaks about that formal equality far too often masks deeply rooted gender inequalities. And that's the reason for developing by some of legal or feminist legal theologians like Sandra Fredman, this approach, in her case, the so-called four-dimensional approach to substantive gender equality. And she speaks about the necessity for courts, for judges, for policymakers, when thinking about formal legal equality and formal gender equality and its transposing into the substantive gender equality, that they have to take into consideration 4 dimensions. So the first one, she uses the term redressing. We can translate that overcoming disadvantage. And then those who listened about at previous lecture, they know that there are considered not only primarily there are considered social economic disadvantages within the private sphere, unpaid work at home, also in the public sphere, unpaid jobs, unemployment, or lower paid gender pay gap, etc., etc. But not only that, but the need for overcoming, besides or in service of overcoming social economic disadvantage, overcoming disadvantages in education, in the field of culture, media, etc. So to make changes in all spheres of social life, which could and should and would contribute to overcoming disadvantages which women in social, political, cultural, educational terms do experience. And then the second is addressing, challenging stigma, stereotyping, humiliation, and violence with which all women, some to the least, others to the most, do experience due to the patriarchal framework of gender roles, but also due to all other dimensions of their disadvantage and discrimination, which altogether lead towards strengthening gender-based stigma, stereotype, and humiliation. Then the issue of participation, the lack of voice, right to vote and right to voice, participation in decision making of women concerning, let's say, cultural collectivist norms, judicial process, voice of the victim of discrimination or gender-based violence, voice within policy-making decisions relevant for overcoming multiple discrimination. And the fourth dimension about which Sandra Friedman speaks in this four-dimensional framework for understanding how to overcome essentially multiple gender-based discrimination, how to go beyond former legal equality, which if taken as gender insensitive or gender blind, has had as the result the lack of substantive equality. This meeting will end in 5 minutes, so I will fast finish what I want to say, and then when it stops, I will start the meeting again, and whatever, maybe you have to log in or it will work, as Nina said, automatically. I really don't know. So the fourth dimension is accommodating difference and transforming institutions, meaning that all differences among women related to multiple forms of their discrimination based on gender and other sources have to be taken into consideration, in a sense that institutions do their best to accommodate themselves, to change themselves, to enable overcoming these different, how to say, elements which can, within institutional context, which can directly or indirectly contribute to the discriminated position of women. And so these four dimensions of which have to be taken into consideration by courts, by policymakers, by institutional policy, in institutional management of different institutions within education, labor, culture, media, etc., are elaborated in favor or for purposes of overcoming, in essential sense, gender inequality. Now I will try to go on, and then we will stop. So just to say a few more words about what Sandra Friedman states. So the starting point is that the formal legal equality is not sufficient, because even if equality before the law has been established, disadvantage persists, and this disadvantage tends to be concentrated in groups with a particular status, such as women, people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, and others, different vulnerable groups. And her article is uploaded at Moodle. So the result is that substantive equality comes on agenda in international law and has been embraced by some courts and constitutions. For example, constitutions of Canada, South Africa, India, European Convention of Human Rights, within European Union, UK in certain contexts. So they include a non-discrimination clause outside the formal equality formula, which specifies a list of grounds when likes should be treated alike. So attempt to add, to overcome this limited scope of formal equality in order to contribute to advancing gender-based equality. So, and then these different jurisdictions add several substantive conceptions of equality, like as equality of results, opportunities, value of dignity, I will not go into detail because you have in the next slide about them and their limits, and a little bit more we will say about how Sandra Fredman explains this change, because the point of her four-dimensional approach to substantive gender equality within the legal discourse is to enable, to offer guidelines, the analytical tool, analytical framework for judges, for policymakers, for decision makers in different policy fields or institutions relevant. Nina?
Okay,
Nina?
here we are. Actually, we don't have to wait 5 minutes. You can restart right away. That's good.
Okay, that's
I
good.
think Zoom has a mandatory 5 minutes.
So I will try to start again with the recording. Now I can't find how to do that.
You will just have to share the presentation again because this counts as a new meeting.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's starting. We just don't see it yet. Yes, it's here.
So let's go on. So I like, and I want to quote her again. I did it during the lecture at Feminist Political and Legal Theories, because this really, not only her intentions, but the intention to affirm substantive gender equality within judiciary and beyond, within the wider social, political, legal context is really, this is really very useful. So she says that a single principle understanding of substantive equality, like equality results, opportunities, value of dignity is limited in explanatory capacities, why only a complex combination of different principles can be fully responsive to multiple wrongs, to the social, economic, cultural, political wrongs experienced by women or other outgroups, vulnerable groups, on account of their status. So the point is that complexity of social reality of multiple gender-based discrimination requires much more complex approach, or this four-dimensional approach within which Sandra Fredman does not ignore these single oriented approaches to substantive equality, which I mentioned, equality results, opportunities, value of dignity. She takes all of them into consideration, but also takes, in a more deep sense, takes into or implies, invites for taking into consideration sources of economic, political, cultural discrimination, or making vulnerable groups, in this case, women disadvantaged, demeaned. So now you will see when I quote her, she speaks, aim is to overcome demeaning, humiliation, deprivileging, etc., etc. So doing something for the better off, for vulnerable groups in some more general context of understanding substantive equality, because she does not speak only or primarily or exclusively about gender, substantive gender equality, but substantive gender equality of all those who are, as I said, demeaned, deprivileged, humiliated. And I mentioned these 4 dimensions. I mentioned these limited approaches to substantive equality and will not go more into details, but I want to quote her in order to add to the understandability of what she and what we want with this talk on substantive gender equality. She says this reflects the principle that the right to equality should be responsive to those who are disadvantaged, demeaned, excluded, or ignored. This is this wider context of related to all vulnerable groups. 4-dimensional approach to the right to substantive equality is not a definition, but as she says, an analytical framework to assess, to evaluate, to consider, and assist, to change, to improve, to advance. So to assess and assist in modifying laws, policies, and practices to better achieve substantive equality. So these are, how to say, not only analytical tools, or primarily analytical, but for practical aims to change, to assist, to guide how to modify laws, policies, and practices in order to match in better and more essential way issues of equality, substantive equality, and substantive gender equality. Then again, her quotation, it aims at providing an analytical framework to illuminate better the multifaceted nature of inequality, because we speak about multiple gender-based, because we put focus on gender-based and on intersectionality approach of multiple gender-based discrimination. But she speaks also more generally. So, but an analytical framework to illuminate better the multifaceted nature of inequality and to assist in determining whether. So we have some kind of the criterion, the analytical standpoint, and evaluation oriented and practically oriented standpoint for determining whether actions, practices, or institutions impede or further the right to equality. So whether they advance or represent obstacles, or so whether they contribute to the regress or to the progress in these regards, advancing or preventing the advancement of the right to equality and gender equality. Again, quotation, the aim is to provide a set of criteria to determine whether a law, policy, practice, or institution is likely to fulfill the right to equality, and to point to way in which they should be reformed better to do so. So, epistemological, knowledge-oriented, but not only that, also practical, political attempt or framework. She offers the analytical framework or analytical tool which has practical implications. So the feminist legal discourse which we get here has relevant, extremely relevant theoretical, but also political and legal and judicial consequences. So addressing stigma, overcoming social economic disadvantage plus all other sources of disadvantage. I mentioned that at the end of this slide where I put in bold. So redressing disadvantage should encompass more than social economic aspect related to maldistribution of resources, but such as overcoming domination power imbalances within and outside the family, removing obstacles to genuine choices of women within education, labor, job opportunities related to child care, within media, reproducing or overcoming gender stereotypes, prejudice, etc. So all sorts of overcoming negative circumstances related to these different sources of disadvantage, including also related to disability and caring obligations. So all of this together is, in a very complex way, included into this first dimension of her four-dimensional understanding of gender substantive equality. Another one addressing stigma, stereotype, and prejudice, and class violence. And here, I just want to mention shortly, later we will speak about these terms, that dealing with social contracts like stigma, stereotypes, and prejudice within education, within political culture, within media, for example, sanctioning or being strictly against the hate speech in political sphere or wherever, or in education, or using stigma, stereotypes, and etc. All of that in order also all of that in order to change the political culture, to develop solidarity and respect for each human being, and avoiding demeaning of women or girls or any gender-based humiliation to be done. And all of that also in order to diminish the sources and causes of gender-based violence, which, as we mentioned earlier, but today there will be a little bit more talk about gender-based violence. So each kind of humiliation, devaluation leads of certain groups or certain vulnerable groups leads towards violence applied in relations with them. So I will skip more talk about participatory, but maybe just to mention this. For example, formal right to speak, as she said, is not sufficient for women, unless there is also the potential of being heard and being engaged in ongoing changes, political or during the judicial process. There is very important to mention that in the judicial process, it's very important that the position of the victim be heard. That narrative has to be seriously taken into consideration, but also maybe even that, no, I don't want to say even more important, but in the cases when So this is relevant for the cases of gender-based violence. But also very important is when we have some rigid cultural norms, which are very collectivistic. And in some cases, women from those ethnocultural groups voluntarily, by their own will, appropriate certain patterns of behavior, of patterns of dressing. And in that case, it's not so, how to say, clear or defined how the reaction toward this, how to say, maybe some kind of the collision between gender equality understood from the point of Western human rights position and the right to difference based on cultural differences. So for those women who do accept this approach and appropriate cultural habits, that is not so clear and how to say, this approach from human rights to be the only legitimate. If something is due to their own personal will and voice, so if they have a right to voice, to explain their position, then the situation is different. And I spoke about the accommodation institutional changes in order to accept the position of recognition of differences. However, there are many controversies. I mentioned that during the lecture of feminist political and legal theories. For some issues like gender female mutilation or some other ethnocultural habits which put into danger the lives of women or girls, the contestation or the problematic, the issue of whether institutions should be accommodated or not is clearly on the side no. But there are many other cultural patterns for which institutions can and should or could accommodate to recognize, to demonstrate recognition of differences. And then Sandra Fredman says, and I like it, and I think it's rather convincing, that there is no final response to this question, whether institutions should accommodate in this or that case. However, this four-dimensional approach helps to open the discussion for all these complex angles in order to come to the best or the best possible, how to say, responses, and to adopt them for judicial decision making or for institution accommodation decision making, etc. And now we can make a short, or please tell me. Now it is close. We are close to 6 o'clock. Should I go up to the new break, or we should make a short break now? Maybe to go on.
It's fine for me to go on whatever people say.
I don't mind either.
Okay.
We can go on.
Because we will finish. We will thank you. We will finish earlier, and anyway, we will have a break, technical break, which we can use a little bit for a longer break. Let us see what will happen. So we now, some of you, because we spoke a lot about gender-based discrimination, and you have the slide, but some of you can join and tell us about the meaning of gender-based discrimination, non-intended or indirect and direct discrimination. and why gender-based discrimination. But later we will mention that again. But why gender-based discrimination cannot and has not been only based on gender anytime. Okay, let's go, because if you don't feel like, but please interrupt me and take part, please. So, any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex and gender that has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women. This is taken from a few sources, which you can see down at the bottom of the slide. So, and this is a bit controversial part of this definition, which I put in red. Irrespective of their marital status and on a basis, so any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex and gender that has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women, irrespective of their marital status and on a basis of equality between women and men, of human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. What does it mean, irrespective of their marital status? First, never it is irrespective, always also marital status takes part in defining a multiple gender-based multiple gender-based discrimination, and irrespective of their marital status and on a basis of equality between women and men, of human rights, and this really is. I think we should not lose the time for this, but this is a rather controversial part of the definition. But if somebody wants to add something or to make the comment, please do that. But speaking about indirect discrimination, of women being denied the exercise of a right because of a lack of recognition of pre-existing gender-based disadvantage and inequality that women face. You remember when I spoke about how substantive, the limits of considering substantive gender equality from the point of single principle like equality of results, of equality of opportunities. The problem with those one-dimensional approaches is that they do not take into consideration the inherited disadvantages of women due to their economic, educational, family, cultural, ethnocultural, and other elements of their heredity. And direct discrimination, the failure to take necessary legislative measures to provide the full realization of women's rights, the failure to adopt and implement national policies aimed at achieving gender equality, and the failure to enforce relevant laws. And as CEDAW Convention recognizes and addresses both forms of discrimination from law as such and from its and from practice. In all cases, law in the case of laws, policies, procedures, or practices. So these two legal and practical dimensions, wherever happened, have to be taken into consideration, and related terms. glass ceiling, multiple discrimination, intersectionality. I did not mention here, but you know that intersectionally understood gender-based discrimination as the multiple one. Segregation, also oppression. I did not introduce that term, but gender oppression, many feminist authors, for example, Iris Morion-Young, when she speaks about those 5 phases and phases of discrimination, including gender discrimination, she uses the term oppression and gender oppression. But here, so I did not, so multiple gender discrimination can be named also gender oppression, and related to that, the term gender segregation, differences in patterns of representation of women and men in the labor market, public and political life, unpaid domestic work and caring, and in young women's and men's choice of education. So why here this term segregation? Is it completely synonymous or want something to add? Group. So puts the discrimination or multiple discrimination into the context of the particular groups, and higher vertical or subordinating grouping of those different social layers. So gender segregation in this sense adds a little bit to the terms gender discrimination. And then differentiation between a vertical discrimination and the horizontal one. Vertical, concentration of women and men in different grades, levels of responsibility or positions. So hierarchy, power relations, and everything from which it comes out, and manifestations as the outcomes. And it indicates the under or over representation of women and men workers in occupations or sectors at the top of an ordering based on desirable attributes, income, prestige, job stability, etc. And horizontal discrimination. So horizontal concentration of women and men in different sectors and occupations. That's rather, it becomes relatively common to use terms like feminization of primary education or feminization of judiciary, when masculinization, for example, of natural sciences, particular universities like those for electrotechnic and others. So too much concentration of one or another, or feminization. I mentioned judiciary and lack of feminization within the bar associations, and always these processes of horizontal discrimination and gender-based horizontal discrimination always, unfortunately, imply some kind of devaluation of certain professional affiliations and financial and economic benefits which have been attached to these professions and professional affiliations. So as less paid jobs, more women come there. That's some kind of simplified understanding or explanation. Multiple discrimination, we know what it means. If somebody if somebody wants to add something, please do that. What I want to add, because I do not want to wait, but please interrupt me, some kind of clarification or description of this theoretical concept. Theoretically, we spoke a lot and we will speak additionally, but in a descriptive terms, so women belonging to certain disadvantaged groups are at higher risk of being subjected to unequal treatment because they share a combination of characteristics that may trigger discrimination and are affected by multiple discrimination in different ways or to different degrees more than men belonging to the same groups. For example, the Roma women, low level of education, unemployed, impoverished, poor, and then I mentioned here sterilization of Roma women without their consent as the last or the top outcome of multiple gender-based discrimination of those most vulnerable, including Roma, including especially Roma women and girls. And to repeat once again, always when we speak about multiple discrimination or intersectionality approach to gender-based discrimination, we should never forget that it does not mean something like identity of, how to say, collecting different features of particular vulnerable groups or individuals, but thinking about their particular features from the point of power relations, different power systems of exploitation, of racism, of ageism, etc., disablism, etc., which have been crossed within their personal lives and destinies. So always again, power relations have to be kept in mind. Why? I mentioned that somehow during the last lecture, because here we do not intend just to make the overview of particular person or group of individuals, but we want to understand which power systems have been embedded into those particular features with an aim to change them, to contribute to their overcoming in the way how, for example, Sandra Fredman speaks about four-dimensional approach to different.
Professor.
Yes, please.
I think in this case, example must be a pregnant woman. They have multiple discrimination. Pregnant woman.
Yes, of course.
Pregnant
But
have no
pregnant,
yeah.
pregnant women. But imagine when you have the girl, Roma girl, a pregnant girl.
Yeah.
So many oppressing or discriminatory power systems have been embedded into her into her destiny.
Yes.
I agree with you. And somebody else wants to say, but please, can you add something? Can you reconsider what you said with making differentiation, with thinking about and presenting us different situations and different mutual crossing power systems in the cases of some rich white woman from the Western country or some poor colored or Roma person and their pregnancy, and the reproductive rights, not only pregnancy, but right to health care and all other dimensions of reproductive rights in case of all of them. Situation is extraordinary different.
And
So
also,
it can just to add something for opening the discussion. Obstetric violence, let's say, can happen also to some established white pregnant middle class or higher class woman who gives the birth, who plans or who actually does giving the birth in some public hospital, or it can also happen in the private hospital, well-paid hospital, that obstetric violence happens. We cannot guarantee, so less possible, but let's say that it happens. So can you take all of this into consideration? Who wanted to say something? Whom I interrupted? I apologize.
I just wanted to say briefly regarding pregnancies. Not only are pregnant women at a disadvantage, but often, particularly at work and so on, women are even disadvantaged just for the idea that they might get pregnant.
Yes.
Particularly if they're of childbearing age, particularly if they're married, then the
now we have to stop. 5 minutes more, and then when it stops, I will start again. So, Nina, please go on. Sorry for interrupting you. So,
that was essentially it. So often employers ask potential women candidates for a job, what are your family plans? Do you intend to have children, and so on? And that, while that should not be, that is often one of the factors whether to hire someone or not, while of course men are asked something like that way less often.
And that's highly discriminating, and the speeches, progressive changes in the labor law, and also in the recruitment procedures have to take to avoid this approach, which we know that which has been very much even in spite of the fact that there are attempts to prevent that have been present still, directly or indirectly. So who wants to add to that? Saiful, do you want to add? Is this stopped?
Professor, I'm in line, no problem. Okay.
But would you like to add something when speaking about pregnant women, girls, elder?
Something after the break, no problem. After
Okay. So after the break, okay. Now I will stop this frustrating imposed breaks. So I will make the break, and we will meet soon again.
Okay.
Sorry. Just stop recording. The recording will stop.
The recording will stop automatically.
Nina, now shall I wait for...
you can end the meeting and start it again. Hopefully it will restart the timer.
Okay. How to end it now? I'm a little bit...
Well, just the big red X. Or, you're still in the presentation, but you can just stop the sharing, and then when you're back in the WebEx screen, you can just click the big red X.
Sharing, okay.
And now you have the red.
Again. But
now
we will make 5 minutes break.
Okay.
Okay.
Quite okay.
Una, Ksenia, Alexander Seifel, and our colleague. So who does not have reader for feminist political and legal theories?
I
Because
don't
I
have a
have,
reader yet.
Alexander,
I have an old one that I picked up last week, but
then
this
for
week,
you, with you, Xenia, with you, I don't have the problem, but I want them to have. Una also, I think, has, but Seifel, Alexander, and I can't, excuse me, I can't remember.
Sir Market.
So what shall I do? I do not have online version.
Yeah, Professor, I will send you my address to you.
Please
at night.
do that, Alexander. Why don't you come in
I'll come in person and collect the reader myself
Okay.
at the next
And
opportunity.
Sharmarke,
Yeah.
please
Yes, ma'am.
send. When are you coming?
What you say? I didn't hear you.
When are you coming?
I think I'll come next month because it's still I'm waiting for my visa process, so
I know. Okay.
it will take some time.
Maybe we can just scan it for them.
Maybe okay. I
can
have
take it down to the photocopy
yes,
place.
I will do that.
They
because
don't work now, but tomorrow.
There some changes were done, and Maria has to. Okay, I will provide that. That's the most easy. I will organize scanning, and you will have it on at Moodle. You registers for Moodle, Sharmarke?
What?
Already. And just a second. So intersectionality, I do not want to speak more today because we spoke enough about, and now I mentioned how this intersectionality approach, which takes into consideration the multiple discrimination and the disadvantage that occurs as a consequence of the combination of power imbalances reflected through intersecting of discrimination based on sex and gender with other discriminatory grounds. So we spoke a lot, and its complementarity with the gender justice approach or approaches, a few of them which are relevant. And as I spoke about that one of Nancy Fraser, maybe has been the most elaborated, but all of them, a few of them mentioned, are relevant. And also Sandra Fredman. Violence against women. We spoke about, in a sense, how there are three steps towards, I would say, the most complex understanding of causes of gender-based violence. One is patriarchal heredity of subordination, demeaning, devaluation as the primary source of gender-based, of stigma, prejudice, etc., and the privileging women in the family life, private life, and the public life as the main source and cause of gender-based violence. But then I elaborated the talk about these patriarchal metrics through the concept or syntagm of the dialectic of patriarchy and emancipation. I tried to explain how, metaphorically speaking, clashes of civilizations, clashes of that patriarchally defined pre-modern context of living, and impacts of all emancipatory trends with emerging of modernity and contemporary times. And then we have this dialectic or the clashes between these two opposite historical or civilizational tendencies. And this clashing as such has been also the source of gender-based violence. And I also mentioned particular impact of neoliberal globalization for rising trends of this strengthening of these two mentioned sources of violence and the rising trends of gender-based violence, and of course intersectional understanding of multiple gender-based discrimination leads us towards necessary adding to these two steps intersectionally understood causes and sources, those related to multiple discrimination as the source of gender-based violence. But here I will go more into some, so this is how to say political, theoretically, sociologically speaking about gender-based violence. But now in this presentation, we will put more focus on some relevant definitions. And I will start with a few definitions coming from some relevant international organizations. For example, this OHSHR, that's Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. But before there is also coming from there one relevant definition. It is said that gender-based violence is considered to be any harmful act directed against individuals or groups of individuals on the basis of their gender. It may include sexual violence, domestic violence, trafficking, forced early marriage, and harmful traditional practices like female genital mutilation, let's say. There will be some repetitions, but each of these definitions which I chose to include adds something. So let us, how to say, be tolerant towards some repetitions because of these other reasons. So sexual and gender-based violence, UNHCR makes this differentiation, has become a global concern because of the seriousness of the issue and its perpetual consequences. And then from this international organization comes the definition of sexual and gender-based violence differentiated as terms. Nina?
Permission to ask a tricky question or to be the devil's advocate a bit.
Please.
While I understand that these definitions are usually posed very broadly to protect as many people as possible, and in that respect, that is good. Don't you think that it's a bit going towards the idea that it's saying that gender-based violence, it's gender-based violence just if there's a gender difference? I mean, for example, say we have a man who is violent and he's living with his girlfriend and he beats her. Mm-hmm. Most people will say that it's gender-based violence. Now, imagine, for example, that same man, that he's bisexual and that he broke up with that girlfriend and now he has a boyfriend and he's beating his boyfriend too. Mm-hmm. Is that gender-based violence too now, or is it automatically not because they're same sex and gender?
No. That's obviously, for sure.
That's intimate part violence in both cases, but is it gender-based?
That's necessarily gender-based violence because always, so being gender understood as multiple category or as a binary. So each violence among, but we will hear also the others, among gay partners or lesbian partners or bisexual or heteronormative binary partners, always that's gender-based violence.
So any partner violence in a romantic or
Any-
sexual
no.
relationship is gender-based automatically.
Not only partner violence, any violence caused by gender or sex.
Yes, but that's precisely why I'm asking, is this necessarily caused by gender? If this man is violent towards both men and women, is his violence caused by the victim's gender, or is it just caused by the fact that he is a violent man?
No, he can be. Many husbands or many partners have been violent persons, but it does not, I think, it does not change the situation that we should differentiate when he commits violence towards his daughter or wife or lover or his gay partner, that it is gender-based violence, and when he is violent more generally, independently from relations based on gender.
So any type of family violence is automatically gender-based violence then?
No. No.
So where's the difference? I'm just wondering where's that delineation?
Let us. So family, we have family, and we have violence between sisters or brothers, between men and between partners, homosexual partners or male-female heteronormative partners, binary partners. That violence most often. So sometimes killing or quarrels happen independently, but within family issues, they are most gender-based. And quarrels between sisters and brothers, or let's say between sisters, fortunately, very rarely, but we hear about brother killed brother accidentally, or sometimes happen something very obscure things. That I think maybe if we go more into depth, maybe we can realize that is also gender-based. But rarely it can happen that it is not gender-based violence. But most of these other cases are gender-based violence. What do you want to comment, or some others want to make comments? Because I started being very clear and then I lost the line. But if you ask me again, I can respond more clearly in another attempt.
Simply, personally, I'm more comfortable with a more narrow definition where gender-based violence means that it's based on some sort of prejudice or violent intentions towards a certain sex or gender, regardless whether that individual is of the opposite sex or not. But the way it is put more and more frequently, and in these documents, it turns out that practically anywhere except where you were practically unaware of the person's gender, it's gender-based violence. So yes, if I hit someone with a car, it's not gender-based, even if that person was a man, because I was just a careless driver.
But where, Nina, did you see? I can't follow you. Where this, how to say, over? You want to say that this understanding in these definitions, but I started with their quoting them. Maybe I should go on with their definitions, and then you can stop me and interrupt and say, here we have overextended understanding of gender-based violence. To be honest, I did not see anything as overextended, because always pointed are elements of gender-based, but maybe you can. So shall I go on and then?
Okay.
Please, because otherwise I do not understand fully what kind of too much relativization or.
Well, since you just said that anything in an emotional or sexual partnership or in family is automatically gender-based.
Most, I would say, independently of these definitions. Let us hear the others. Most of those cases, because always that is the issue of power relations. When parents think that they can beat their kids, that's also patriarchal power relation and gender-based violence.
Okay, say we have 3 fathers who are beating their kids. All 3 have both sons and daughters. One of them beats only his sons because he thinks they should grow up to be strong and to man up, and he should be lenient towards girls. The other beats only his daughters because he thinks women deserve it, and the third beats both his sons and daughters. Are all 3 cases of violence gender-based? Or is the third one not gender-based?
Very much.
Even the one who beats both the boys and the girls.
There are differences, and differentiation is less. But listen, so in the patriarchally patterned, framed, formed family, besides a hierarchy between male and female, mostly, there is also hierarchy between parents and children.
But is it gender-based if he treats children of both sexes the same?
Oh, just a second. If he treats them equally, but not violently, equally in terms of system of values and everyday behavior with the respect for their personality and with giving them good example, dialogues, etc., then that's one story. But beating both only male or female children, all of that differently, but at the end of the day, awfully and unacceptably means gender-based violence and very often women do that as well, mothers. So disciplining of kids and molding their behavior in some kind of the patriarchal pattern. So what happens? Why there is also power relation between parents together towards children? Because children are, how to say, they are nemoćni. I forgot the
powerless.
Word. Yes, the children. So children cannot protect themselves. They're weak physically, mentally, psychologically, due to their age, their position in all terms. So they're, how to say, dependent on their parents, not only on father but also on parents, both or so. But why there is this hierarchy also between parents and children? Because in the patriarchal pattern, female members of this parenthood, they also accept the, how to say, the violent pattern of behavior, disciplining pattern of behavior towards children. So I gave you the birth, we gave you the life together, or I gave as mother birth to you, and I have, how to say, the power over your destiny. I can decide what you have to do, etc., etc. And if you are not obedient, so patriarchal family presupposes obedience of children, and they're molding into the patriarchal pattern of social roles and behavior, and also patriarchal pattern of relations between parents and children as the hierarchical behavior which presupposes obedience, and if children are not obedient, then beating them. And so child rights and children rights, everything is completely put aside. So patriarchal pattern ignores this concept of the child and children as personalities who deserve respect and protection.
I understand
Respect
it's
as human beings.
patriarchal, but
What?
I understand that's patriarchal. But if children, both sons and daughters, are treated in the same way, in which way is it gender based? Or okay, you could say it's gender based.
No, it was very clear. If they are treated in the same way from the point of respect and
Yeah, if they're
care,
treated poorly, but equally poorly. So if they're all beaten and mistreated.
if they are treated equally poorly in a sense of beating and devaluating them and humiliating them and requiring full obedience, that's gender-based, patriarchally based violence, gender-based violence, definitely. What do the others say? I must say that I'm a little bit surprised that this is put as a question at all. But let us maybe somebody has also different opinion, and let us discuss. Okay, then let us leave this. We can discuss it again, but
We can, of course.
If you can let me mention these definitions, because they are relevant. In none of them is mentioned this issue of family beating, but I think that's self-understandable in all these definitions, that beating of children of this or that sex or gender or sexual orientation of children independently always means gender-based, unacceptable gender-based violence. And then trafficking of kids and slavery imposed, how do we say proceed by? I forgot at the moment.
Proposal.
Yes, okay.
Marriage
so
proposal.
let's go through these definitions. So UNHCR defines sexual and gender-based violence. Sexual and gender-based violence refers, they put that in singular, to any act that is perpetrated against a person's will and is based on gender norms and unequal power relationships. It encompasses threats of violence and coercion. It can be physical, emotional, psychological, or sexual in nature, and can take the form of denial of resources or access to services. It inflicts harm on women, girls, men, and boys. So also for boys and men, it can be qualified as sexual and gender-based violence, of course. Thus, the term refers to any harmful act that is perpetrated against one person's will and based on socially ascribed gender differences between males and females. It includes acts that inflict physical, mental, or sexual harm or suffering, threats of such acts, coercion, and other deprivations of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. So in private life, here it is said concerning family life. Sexual violence is a form of gender-based violence and encompasses any sexual act, attempt to obtain a sexual act, unwanted sexual comments or advances, or acts to traffic or otherwise directed against a person's sexuality using coercion by any person regardless of their relationship to the victim in any setting, including parents, mother, father, cousins, sisters, brothers. Sexual violence takes multiple forms and includes rape, sexual abuse, forced pregnancy, forced sterilization, forced abortion, forced prostitution, trafficking, sexual enslavement, forced circumcision, castration, Tipfeller, and forced nudity. And I think that also is interesting, and there we can stop and then continue the discussion if you want, just to see. Yes, we will stop there. We will stop with this. I like these definitions, and I think each of them is useful in this or that amount. And the International Committee of Red Cross gives definitions of sexual violence and gender-based violence as an umbrella term. So sexual violence, acts of a sexual nature committed against any person by force, threat of force, or coercion. So acts of sexual nature linked with force, coercion. Coercion can be caused by circumstances such as a fear of violence, duress, detention, psychological oppression, or abuse of power. The threat of force or coercion can also be directed against another person. Sexual violence also comprises acts of a sexual nature committed by taking advantage of a coercive environment of a person's incapacity to give genuine consent. Sexual violence encompasses acts such as rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, or enforced sterilization. And this umbrella term, gender-based violence, its umbrella term for any harmful act that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to a woman, man, girl, or boy on the basis of their gender. Gender-based violence is a result of gender inequality and abuse of power. Gender-based violence includes, but is not limited to, sexual violence, domestic violence, trafficking, forced or early marriage, forced prostitution, and sexual exploitation and abuse. So that's it, and I would stop here. And please, comments, reactions. Does anybody want to say something?
Please talk. The most important part of these lessons are maybe for us to discuss things with you. Don't be afraid to have a different opinion from us.
It's very easy because everybody knows from his own experience, or from if somebody is fortunate only from films or narratives about beating of children, being male boys or girls. let us talk. There was one discussion a few years ago at our faculty, and then there, in the process of articulating and enacting of the law against violence towards kids, children protection from violence, and one of the presenters, I don't want to say a very good friend of mine, but the person with whom I have many similarities in understanding these things. But at one moment he said something shocking for me. He said, oh, what's the problem? My mom did break the chair while beating me, and you see that I'm normal, that nothing happened to me, and I did not react then, but forever I have been remembering this. And when I meet him, sometimes I really will have to ask him what was the point of that argument, what kind of the argument it is. So please.
I can share a story. That's okay.
Please, who is that?
Ksenia speaking.
Ksenia, ciao. Please, Ksenia.
Hello. Well, recently, a few days ago, our employer organized some kind of a consultation or a lecture for mentoring employees. Mm-hmm. And one of the heads of departments wanted to speak and said, when I was younger, our professors, who we loved very much, used to beat us when we were like wrong or didn't know something, and we really loved him, and like I don't think that violence is that bad. We all like laughed it off, and then the presenter of the course was completely shocked and was like, usually your laugh is like a trauma response, like that's not okay, but you can really see how it is very deeply rooted in all of us that beating kids is like a good thing in any sort of way. And it's really disturbing to me. So yeah, that was something that I was so shocked, and everyone was laughing like, ha ha ha, oh yeah, the professor was beating the kids, and that's great.
And nothing for laughing there.
Nothing for laughing, but I really saw how it is socially acceptable, especially in our region, to that beating and any sort of violence against children is considered as something good for them. So yeah.
Thank you for this taking part. And now again, this meeting will end in 5 minutes. But believe me, so I read recently about our schools in 50s and 60s, reminding us how it was. I don't remember that from my school time, but anyway, I read about that. Then that was rather culturally acceptable, beating kids in schools. But I know for sure that for longer than in Serbia or former Yugoslavia, in the British schools, there was the habit, as acceptable habit, of beating kids. And fortunately, that kind of behavior or punishing kids has been forbidden and sanctioned. I hope very strictly sanctioned.
Yes,
but not only in school, but also in the families.
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, in the families still. Mm-hmm.
If I may just briefly, before we run out of time, I think a big factor in how people perceive it is a psychological one. So yes, for a long time, it was considered normal to beat children when they do something wrong. And even today, psychologists, recommend parents, when you are punishing your child, not necessarily physical punishment. So when you're telling them no pocket money this week, or you can't play computer games or anything, don't do it angrily. Don't do it as an emotional response. You just, as the person in charge, calmly say you have done something bad, you have, I don't know, beaten your little sister or something, you can't play computer games. And then if those people, that teacher or someone, was someone behaving in that way, so just, the pupil did something wrong, that deserves a beating, slap, slap, but beyond that, I love those children, I think I'm doing something good for them, and was otherwise good, I believe the pupils took that part. But anyone who likes beating children is much more problematic, even if he hides behind the fact, oh, it's good for them. I mean, anyone who likes punishment of any sort. I'm not defending it. I'm just explaining why in some cases.
You've been relativizing. So punishing kids, number one, must not be physical.
I agree completely. I'm just explaining the psychological factor.
But also psychological violence is possible as well towards within punishing of kids. That it can be very violent, very aggressive, very harmful. And what has to be taken, because there are categories, there are explanations in psychology, for example, by Eric Fromm, which I remember very well because they are very applicable for upbringing quality, or pedagogic and upbringing orientations. Building authority. There are two different ways. Authoritative, hierarchical, which is often attached to aggressiveness, expectations of obedience and punishing and physical, psychological punishment, and authoritative authority. So parents should not develop or apply, that's my deep belief, and also is based on a relevant social psychology and philosophy theory. I mentioned Eric Fromm, and pedagogic theories. So building authority on the quality of relation and argumentation and communication and respect. And so building authority not on fear, but on the good example and the dialogue.
That was precisely my point. I mean, if that teacher was otherwise building authority in a good way and was just using physical punishment because it was part of the system at the time, then the students might have not held it against him. Simply, it was common in that school.